This is the Nomad Futurist podcast, a podcast about the evolution of technology, society, and transformation. Connect with us, share your thoughts with us at nomadfuturist.com. Let's get this started. Here are Phil and Nabil. Hello. This is Nabil Mahmood, your host of Nomad Futurist from Kona, Hawaii.
This is Phil from Brooklyn, New York.
And this is Amy Marks. I'm here in beautiful New Jersey.
Amy, thank you very much for joining us. So tell a little bit about yourself, what you do, who you are, where you're at in your career.
Sure. My name is Amy Marks. I am the head of Industrialized construction strategy and evangelism for Autodesk.
Before we go on, I just want the audience to know who we have with us. We have a woman that goes by many names. Some people refer to her as the Queen of Prefab. I refer to her as the Kim Kardashian of Colo. She is a legend, not only in her own mind, but in the minds of everyone that have met her. How does one who is now, the chief evangelist of Autodesk, a huge multinational company, which is actually fairly recent, so we'll get to how that happened. How does one get from small town New Jersey, USA, to being the chief evangelist, queen of prefab?
It actually says it on my business card. I could show it to you.
That is a long business
cool?
card. Yeah,
it's very cool. I grew up in Long Island, New York, until I was about 12. And then I moved around a lot. But my dad and my mom started a general contracting business in their basement that ended up growing to build about over 20 million square feet now in New York. And so I grew up in the business space. And I think when I went to college, they were basically, and I graduated high school at 16 and I was like kind of lost. I was always bored in school, to be honest. They were like, whatever you do, just don't go into construction. I think it's not so great for women. And I was like, yeah, I don't really want to do that anyway. So I don't know what I should do. So actually my undergraduate degree is in public relations from the University of Florida. And I basically walked up and a bunch of girls one day said hey, you look really fit. You should play rugby with us. And I was like, let's play rugby. I don't know even what that is. And so I taught scuba and I played rugby. And I was in the top public relations college in the country. And all these women would walk in all pretty with suits on to class. So I always said I was either dirty or wet and walked into class. And I just didn't fit in at all. I was younger, I was dirty, wet. And I was I looked like a misfit in every course that I ever walked in the door for, to be honest. And I wasn't that great at going to class. I was like that girl that read the book and took the test and got an A and really made everyone mad. That was my MO. But I did have a lot of fun at the University of Florida, honestly. And then, I think as time goes on, I did a couple of cool jobs on the way. So I did something partnership marketing for Bertelsmann at one point. I actually had an advertising sales job that I went door to door. They used to drop me in different towns to sell ads. And I read lots of books like Spin Selling. And I would walk out with $1 million worth of contracts. And I think I made no money, but on my commission, I was making, high six figures. I was doing pretty well at sales. And then really my dad needed some help back at his construction company. And I went back to help him and realized wow, nothing's changed since I was a kid. And I came here and everything kind of looks exactly the same. And I worked with him. He's a really smart man, very difficult, to be honest. I think that's where I always say I look shy and quiet compared to him, for those people that really knew him in the space. And then in reality, I saw an opportunity to buy a modular steel and concrete manufacturer that did things like embassies and telecommunications buildings and data centers. And I was a small minority partner in that and bought a company back in the day called Coleman. And then 10 years ago, more than 10 years ago now, left to start my own consultancy business that was just going to focus on large scale adoption of prefabrication, working with really big clients, mostly tech focused clients. And maybe halfway into that 10 years, a lot of my old clients started coming back and they were like, we need you to build these data centers, these little small subsea cable landing stations and data centers that no one else could really do. So we were like, all right, whatever, we're going to get back into the building business. So we had two parts of our business at XSite, one building these prefabricated small data centers that no one else wanted to do or could do, and also consulting. I like to think I was at the top of the food chain working with owners, and then at the very, very bottom of the food chain. And I always say I just never remembered how to change my conversation because I'm sort of always authentic. So I was the same person, whether I was talking the CEO or like those guys that had just honestly crawled out of the primordial ooze. I couldn't change my language. So that's really how I got to where I was at XSite.
What a fascinating story. You know, I think like the goal of our podcast initially was to try to find people that like had like winding roads to get to the world of critical infrastructure. And in some cases, we've accomplished our task. You know, everyone has a different way they've gotten here because this is a fairly new industry in general, in the grand scheme of things. But your story is kind of perfect. It's kind of exactly what we're looking for, because I can't imagine playing rugby in the University of Florida while going to school for PR. Like, if you could talk to yourself at that point and say, you're going to be in the critical infrastructure business, you're going to be on panel after panel after panel with these thought leaders in subsea cabling, and it's going to be you and like Gil Santalese going at it on some conversation about whatever. So it's just that blend of just bubbly, marketing-y stuff, and being able to apply that to a world that you would think would be closed off because it's only, guys in lab coats and whatnot, I think is fascinating, as you can tell by just the cadence of how I'm speaking. So I'll slow down.
No, I mean, it is like crazy, right? So I like to say that like the world has changed and like my parents were wrong, but they weren't wrong. I mean, I still feel like I look around at these events and it's like, there are 5 women, like it's easy to pick me out. I always say I'm the blonde in high heels. Just look around. I'll be like, I look like myself and maybe like, one other person there, maybe, which funny enough, I just never let it bother me in the sense that I always use it to my advantage. Like I always said, listen, all you guys in suits look alike. All you guys in polo shirts look alike. There's only one of me. And they always knew who I was because I wasn't shy and I spoke my mind. And I always said, like, you didn't have to like me, but a lot of people still listen because what I said was true. So, the truth, like they always say, it's sort of the harder the truth to tell, the truer the friend that tells it. And I don't say things to be controversial. I actually I'm the part that people don't know about me. I'm sort of like 2 sides of the same coin. Like that rugby player, tough girl, like I played rugby for almost 15 years. And I think that's why men in the industry are always like, man, that girl goes toe to toe. She is not afraid. I'm like, why would I be afraid? Actually, after I played at the University of Florida for women's rugby, I went and moved to Miami and there was only a men's team down there. So I actually played for a men's team. I played rugby down for a men's. I was on like the C side, like, of course, I wasn't like on the A side, but I was like, I don't care. I'm going to go toe to toe with those guys. If that's the only way I can play, I'm going to play. My daughter plays for an all boys U12 rugby team right now that's tackle.
The apple does not fall far from the tree.
I'm saying she didn't want to play for many years. And then I was like, hey, it's tackle this year. She's like, I'm in. And I was like, ooh, I know where you get that from. So, yeah, I mean, look, at the end of the day, I'm not going to lie and sugarcoat things and say like it's easy and being a woman in any of these spaces. It's not. It's hard. I mean, like last week, some guy actually said to me, you're so aggressive with me. And I was like, wait a minute.
Dog whistle.
I'm like, oh, I know. I was like, beep. I was like, hold on a second. Let's just stop the meeting.
You haven't seen aggressive yet. Thanks for reminding me.
Like, I thought I was being on my best behavior. That's like actually the funnier part. And he wasn't older than me, funny enough. He was younger. And I know the leadership of the organization he came from. And I was like, listen, luckily enough, this is crazier. There were 3 younger women on the call with me and him. And I said, I don't know if anyone's taught you this, but there's this word called microaggression. Like, first of all, don't mansplain to me what my business is. And I was like, secondly, you can't say those things anymore. And there's 3 women on the phone. Funny enough, he excused himself off the call and wrote apologies apparently to those women, not to me. But I said, to the women on there, you have to ask yourself, do you think he would have excused himself off the call if we were 3 men and me on the call? No, he would have just pummeled me. Right. So I was like, it's not easy. It's still not easy. And
I remember I had you in like a board meeting. I think it was an OpenIX board meeting that we had in my data center, if you remember. And I remember the first thing out of your mouth, and I was just the host. I wasn't even a member of that thing. The first thing out of your mouth was like, look, I have one rule. Women cannot take notes in my meetings. That was the one rule. And then I started taking notes, even though I wasn't part of it, because I was like, okay, no, don't take any meetings. My God, don't take any notes. Don't, please.
I know. I'm like, why is the woman always the scribe and she never gets to like talk at the end? I'm like, I just tell everybody, I'm like, women will not be the scribe. Now, maybe it's like shifted a little bit too one direction, but like I, for years have said, I'm like, I'm not.
Don't woman-splain to me, Amy.
I know.
There are two words that I think perfectly capture what you're saying. One of them is a theme across a lot of our podcasts, which is confidence. I mean, you have to have confidence in both what you know and what you don't know, and you can't be afraid to show that, right? And the other is, and this, you cannot train this, authenticity. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, when you talk about the fact that you're the same, whether someone's a CEO or someone's on the bottom of the barrel, that is unique, I think, certainly in our industry, and Nabil could chime in on this. But, you know, one of the things that I love about, you know, where we currently are right now with our stay-at-home things is like all of the emperors collectively have no clothes at the same time, right? I was never, I mean, you know me, right? I've never been a particularly formal person to begin with. But I am not going back. If somebody claims that they're the CEO of some multi-billion-dollar organization, I am hearing their kids scream in the background. I am hearing their dog get in the way, and I'm seeing them like zip up their pants during the beginning of the Zoom calls because they forgot that they just came out of the bathroom. That's why I almost insist on every Zoom call being video, because I want to know, I want to be in that guy's house. And it's just, it's something that I love so much. And I think the people that are authentic and have that type of confidence are only going to continue to excel in all verticals because, you know, the veneer of formality, I think, has been stripped out with everyone being in the same boat with respect to this.
It's true. It's just, you know, it's a little bit, honestly, it is a little bit harder for women in that case. And I say that, you know, look, I know there are plenty of guys I'm on calls with too. Their kids come up in the middle and they want to talk to them and they want screen time and all that stuff. And my daughter came to the door in the beginning of this and said, like, she just lost her homework in the digital black hole somehow. Right. So it happens. And I was like, no, mommy's on a podcast. But the little bit that's a little bit harder for women is that all these books and all these things that everyone's talking about being our authentic self and to be the, you know, I always go back to Matt Dixon's The Challenger book. And I met Matt Dixon. I'm like, so I get it. The Challenger makes better sales than the Relationship Builder. I'm like, all the advice you gave out in that book, if a woman did that, we're toast. Like I do that anyway, authentically. I don't care. But you're basically telling women to like take charge of the meeting, challenge the client's like opinions on their business, like ask them these hard questions, like, what happens to women in all these meetings when they do that? Like, it is not the same result when a man does that. And I feel like there needed to be a condensum to that book because I guarantee you of the sample size, there were probably not so many women that they actually interviewed in that like conversation. So I'm like, in some ways, like, yeah, this is all great. But if we don't recognize, and look, you know, it's everything that's going on in our world right now. By no means would I even intimate that I have any understanding of what it's like to be Black in this culture in America today. The only hint I have of that is being a woman that walks into a project with 80 men in the room and it's just me and them. Like they know I'm the only woman there. I'm not Black, but I am definitely different than everybody else. It gives me some empathy, honestly, and some understanding when I'm listening to what's going on. Because like, you know, if you've never experienced anything like that, even like, and again, I can't say mine is like of the anywhere of the magnitude. Like I have a hint of that from being in this space, but you know, it's all relative in some ways. Like, you know, it feels bad sometimes when you walk in and like, you know, you don't look like everybody else. And listen, unfortunately in our digital infrastructure space, we have to take some responsibility. Like we are the worst sectors for diversity and inclusion. This is going to sound awful. So you're going to love this. I'm sorry. I have a 12-year-old. It's great that people want to talk to her about the digital infrastructure space and construction and STEM, but she's 11. Like, I don't have time to wait for her to get up to our space. I get angry because I'm like, there are plenty of people in our industry that are of minority status and women that get treated like crap every day. We should probably like focus on some of them and some of the minority and women-owned businesses before you teach my kid to get in our industry. You know, and I'm like, I love that. I know, hey, you know, at the end of the day, I get it. And by the way, there'll be plenty of people that will do programs and they should to like do more STEM and get more engineering into kids and like in minorities. That's fine. But you know what? I'm like, if you don't have women in your leadership, I used to say all the time to the big like digital content guys, I'd be like, hire my company. At least your people will see what a woman CEO looks like. And I can like negotiate in front of them. I can talk tech in front of them and they'll actually see somebody who looks like them because none of you look like me. And like, it's going to take a long time to get somebody like me up at your ranks. So like, if you can't get them there, at least surround yourself with companies that have leadership that looks like some of the people you're trying to like grow up. You know, like it's going to take too long when you deal with my 11-year-old. Like I get really annoyed. It's like,
I mean, you graduated high school at 16. Your 11-year-old could be CEO pretty short order.
Well, but you know, here's the thing. I never hear people talking about the fact right now that like there's going to be a lot of people out of work in this industry, in the country, other countries, even other geos, right? I always think we're too, you know, America centric, and every multinational company that has a headquarters here. That's first. We always have to be globally thinking. But there's going to be a lot of people here that are out of work. Like this is our opportunity. And I don't hear anybody really talking much about that. Like, how do we attract people that are going to be out of work now that have different skills? How do we get moms to come back from being moms into the workplace? It's funny. I hear a lot of, that's my point. I'm like, I hear so many programs about high schoolers, but what about moms that are trying to get jobs after raising kids? Like I hear zero about that. And they've already been educated. They already have skills. And trust me, you know, you're married, your wife has skills you could never have by being a mom, you know, like, and I just believe that. Like, and again, every dad that like wants to come and write me an angry letter that they have skills like I do, co-parenting, bring it on. I'm sure it's true.
That's all well and good. I'm a man of color here as well.
Yeah.
Plus a man that's actually got a little bit of an accent. So that doesn't help the cause either. But yeah. I believe, and I want you to share your thoughts as it entails to it being just an American issue and a cultural issue versus racism and sexism by definition. I don't believe racism and sexism are taught, and they are by definition. It's very culturally driven.
Oh, culture, you know, as they say, eat strategy for lunch. Like, I don't think you have to teach racism. I think it just permeates through your culture, and then racism begets racism. Like, I hate to say it like that, but it's also not an American thing. And believe me, I go to plenty of countries where like they have me there as a speaker, or as I'm working there with some, you know, C-suite executives, and they love bringing in their assistants to meet me because they're all women in some of those countries, and they don't know who else to like introduce me to. There's no one to talk to. And I'm sure if I were of color, they would do the same thing. And I think in America, we tend to think like, you know, colored like skin versus non-colored skin. I don't mean it in that way, like the word that it sounds like, but it's like,
yeah, made you uncomfortable there.
It's an uncomfortable topic, right? I'm fine.
I wouldn't say so. It is what it is. I'm a brown man, and I'm proud to be brown.
I believe in the world culture, not even really just the American culture. So I think we have to just first you have to talk about it, right? So interestingly enough, we had a listening session at Autodesk where we had Black American and also Black people from other countries coming and talking about their stories about racism that they've encountered. We all just listened. It was not interactive. It was a listening session. And it was fantastic to hear, just to really soak it in, somebody else's experience, because we rarely get a chance to just listen like that. I thought it was very good. I thought it was really helpful. And I walked away, and actually Andrew, our CEO, said, like, what's the one thing you can do, whatever that is? And, you know, I talked to my staff about it, and I said, for me, I was telling them the story about the microaggression about being a woman in the meeting. And I said, like, I'm going to continue to speak out and show others it's okay to speak out when somebody has done something and wronged you, even if it's small, you know, and I'm going to do that not just for myself, but I've always been, as you know, like in the industry, I've been a big talker about diversity and inclusion, diversity of thought, you know, diversity of color and background and everything. Like for me, I always say I'm not a feminist, I'm a capitalist. Like I think diversity of thought is what actually gets us better product. So it's not that I want to see a woman just because she's a woman. I just want to see diversity of thought. So the one thing I'm going to keep doing is keep speaking out. I just don't, for me, I'm brave enough, and I don't feel like I'm going to ever get enough, like backlash doesn't, as my own company ownership touched me somewhat. You know, it's hard to run a company as a woman-owned company, but I don't care. I'm going to keep speaking out and give other people, I hope, somebody to look at that they should also speak out too when it happens to them, because it happens every day. I mean, I
think, look, companies are run by people, and I think inherently people are creatures of comfort. So it just becomes, you know, a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? You do things, you hire people in the same way you've always hired people in the past, in large parts based on physically where you're based, which might have, you know, its own, you know, diversity constraints. And I think a lot of the experience that we're seeing now is we're no longer, this trend has gone on, but we're no longer really tethered to a physical location anymore, right? So I think one of the inherent benefits of, you know, whatever you want to call it, the new normal or whatever, is that because, remote work or work from anywhere, whatever you want to call it. It's certainly the norm now. I think it'll continue to be, more prevalent even after COVID-19 goes away or whatever. It just opens up all of these windows where expertise is going to be valued, productivity is going to be valued more than, simply who can commute to the office more regularly.
Exactly. I mean, look, at the end of the day, I used to use this expression. I probably haven't said it in a while, but that whole pale, male, and stale conversation of being like older, over 55, white, and male in leadership,
I noticed that number has creeped up as you age.
I'm 49, so I moved it up to 55 now. Here's the funny thing about it. And Nabil, I say this to you. I'm like, I would say something different if we were all in leadership and we were under 30 and we were all Latina women. I would say some other phrase. But the fact of the matter is we're not. So I have nothing against older white men that are in leadership. I don't. It's not like I'm racist against even just them, because they get very upset when I've said that phrase. And I'm not saying that either. I'm just saying it's not good to be homogeneous of any one type anywhere making decisions. We were at a show, you were at this show, I think in Monaco last year. We did an entire day about 5G. The only maps on the screen were of the US. Every man that was up there, with the exception of one, was from the US and they were white. I'm sorry. And the kicker of it was, we were talking about the fact that this is going to be hard to solve and we're going to have to really collaborate and we're going to have to figure all this out. And I was like, and I stood up at the end and said, if that's true, and you get all the people that I saw speaking today in one room, you're all going to say the same thing, because you're all the same person in reality. You're all from the same background, same, if you're looking for collaboration, you kind of might, the guys from Africa right behind me all day that you showed the US map to, you could ask their opinion. It might be different. So that's my only thing. Again, if we were all if you're in China and you've got a whole homogeneous, leadership of one kind of person, it doesn't really matter what it is. You just need different people to have different perspectives, right? So that's my point about it.
Absolutely. I think it's a mindset change as well, whereby cultures, religions, everybody needs to develop that level of confidence to come out and speak openly and not be afraid. I'm a proud American, but I believe we've actually created a fear factor and we've lost our voice in the last, several decades.
Yes.
Changing gears, staying in our industry, just for this particular podcast. You mentioned a lot about it being harder for women. This is relatively new when you compare it to the other verticals. The data center industry, the technology industry is only 3 decades old.
How about construction? We're not that young.
Yes, but it's a very hard space, right? So what were the things that you encountered in construction market space that you found to be very difficult? And what steps did you take to get deeper into that space and create that presence?
I feel again, I used my differences to create competitive advantage and carve out a niche for myself. I already look different, so I might as well do something differently. And I think that really helped me. I was already, kind of elevated to some different plane. So why not take advantage of that? Look, at the end of the day, the other part I can say is I can say all the reasons, and every time some man has done something to me in the industry, from, putting their hands on me to saying bad things to me, that's all happened to every woman in every industry, almost, I would say, specifically in some of these that are a little tougher for women. We all know what that's like, and we can't pretend that doesn't happen, right? But I would say the other part that, and in some ways I can't do much about that. I can speak out about it, I can do whatever, but sometimes that mindset just has to go and retire, and new people have to come up into the field, right? So, but what I can say, and what I feel I have the most to change, is how women actually treat other women in this space, right? Because we've all experienced that. And instead of actually, we see each other, and sometimes we do one of two things. We either act as if it's a respite to be with somebody else that's like us, and we never talk about work, and we whew. I always I say I take my high heels off and take off my Spanx at that point. It's we breathe a little easier, right? And we don't really talk about work. Or the other thing that happens is we basically lock horns with somebody that we think is we're territorial, because there's only one spot for the one woman that could be in this one place, even though there's 99 other men that are surrounding us. So I like to say basically, one of the things I can change is to teach women how to be great with other women in the space. And when we've done that in some of our, women in tech and women in subsea and, a lot of the women's groups in construction, when we treat each other better and we use that time with each other to use our contacts and our knowledge as capital with each other the same way men do, we are so much more powerful than we could ever be. And we're encouraged and we feel good about it. And so I feel like that's a part that we could change. And we have our own control over that, right? Because we are all women, that we could,
Do you believe that men do the same thing?
What, use their knowledge and contacts and like their as capital?
Exactly.
Oh, hell yeah, of course. What do you think golf is? That's what golf is all about. I mean,
But that's only for a select few, though.
Well, again, it's golf. It's getting invited to the bar afterwards. And again, listen, I'd like to say Me Too, really helped us out, the Me Too movement. But you have men running scared that don't even want to take you to lunch now. Or it's funny. It's funny you said Gil Santeles. Gil and I actually had this conversation once at a conference. He was like, well, I would invite you to play golf if you wanted to play golf. And I was like, listen, it's not that I really am dying to play golf with you guys, although I can play golf and I'm fun to play golf with. I'm the girl that brings cigars and a flask. I'm super fun.
You're not supposed to tackle at golf, Amy.
I know, but I'm really fun at golf. And I was like, it's not that I'm dying to play golf, right? Or dying to go to the bar. It's that, listen, I couldn't get where I'm going to be in life unless I was aggressive, unless I was a pit bull. I relish that word, by the way. I'll bathe in that anytime somebody ever calls it to me, even though they shouldn't, but I will. Because I couldn't be a mouse and get where I am that's obvious. Even one of my guys said that one day to one of my clients. I told him, man, your boss is a pushy broad. And he was like, what do you expect her to be? She's got to deal with guys like you that call her a pushy broad. That's why she is a pushy broad. So I said, look, I'm not dying to play golf, but knowing that I'm trying to get ahead in this industry, which is my job, I only get so much time face to face with you. So you only get to see the pit bull that's trying to sell to you, trying to change you, trying to do whatever. You don't get to see, and this is me of two sides of the coin. I'm actually really sweet to hang out with and fun and nice. And I would get a lot more social capital with you when I have to be the pit bull, that you would understand me as a person better. And we don't get that opportunity as women often because men don't want to really hang out with us that much.
Well, it's not, I don't believe it's that. I personally believe in equality. I don't care the culture, color, religion, race, sex. It doesn't really matter. It's irrelevant. But all these movements and rights and so on and so forth have actually potentially put men at risk even to have a conversation with a woman.
Well,
it's a bloody HR nightmare to have a conversation and be open and say, hey, would you want to hang out? Would you want to go play golf? Now, Phil, would you love to play golf with me? It's the answer is yes. Okay, we work together, Amy. That's a very difficult conversation to have because it could be perceived in a wrong context.
I think there's equality.
Let me say before we get to that, they don't allow Jews on golf courses. Are you crazy?
I think it's, there's a difference between equality. I'm trying to remember what Dr. Robert Livingston says. You also have to adapt, and then there's equality, right? It's equality if you, I think he has a picture actually of people trying to look over a fence, and we should all have the opportunity to look over the fence. And one person gets to stand on a stool to make it equal because they're just not that tall. There's a difference between those two concepts, right? Equality would be too bad. You just get to step up to the fence and what you see, you see. Then there's, equality with making some adaptations that makes everybody equal. That's what we don't have. We don't have people that honestly, that write job descriptions that don't, exclude minorities that, it's proven when they whitewash their resumes, they get more opportunity. When they whitewash their, applications for housing, they get more opportunities. That's true. And so we can't just say equal, everybody's got to fight for themselves. We've actually got to make things
level the playing field.
Level the playing field. Thank you. I was losing the word. We have to level the playing field a little bit. And that means just sometimes being more aware that things can't be the way they've always been. You can't write a job description that excludes minorities or women subtly without actually writing that. You know what I mean? There's now algorithms you can put all of your job descriptions through to make sure that you haven't done that. And we need to invest in tech more like that and teach that so that we don't do it inadvertently.
Absolutely. But it's also a cultural change as well, whereby you've got to put men at a little bit of a confidence level as well to have the same conversation that you will have with another man.
Oh, I don't think there's any man in the world that's ever had a conversation with me that doesn't think it's like having another conversation like with any other man.
But you're an exception to the case. But you're an exception to the case. If you do that to other women in the industry or invite somebody to go golf or to dinner or whatever, it could be construed wrong.
I know. I think the way that you get past that is just saying what you just said. Like, I really like to go to golf with you. I'm like not that great at like communicating with members of the opposite sex. Like, can we just like, let's go play golf? And if there's something I had a guy actually say to me this week, like after this stuff that went on, he said, I don't ever want to be that guy, Amy. And I said, just the fact that you're telling me that and like you're asking me if you've ever done anything like that makes you not that guy. Just so you know, like I now know that he's never going to be that guy because he's smart enough to ask me, how do I not be that guy? So I feel like if you just communicate that, oftentimes you're halfway past the battle.
Well, I think that's where confidence comes from, right? I mean, what is it? Sunshine is the most sanitizing force, right? So if you just call it out and call attention to it when it's happening, it doesn't snowball into these other things. And if, women that are in that vulnerable position felt comfortable historically in saying, I'm not going to do this, and we're able to, not necessarily let, the power structure and the bureaucracy of a situation impact them.
Right.
But I have to agree with you and shy away a little bit from this idea that I mind that men are being knocked off the pedestal a little bit. I think it'll even out. But yes, I think it's fine for men to be scared for a little bit. They've spent plenty of time not being scared. They can be scared a little bit before we just get to a more, let's call it, what do the kids call it these days? Wokeness.
It's funny. I was sitting at a conference last year and I was at like a little table. They were doing a facilitated session and one of the big content providers, a bigwig, was there at our table. And he actually said, I don't want to call him out because we're friends. And he said, while we're talking all about this, we don't want to go too far. Like, we don't want you as women and minorities to feel like you only got here working for us because we've gone too far. And like, it was sort of like affirmative action. And I was like, trust me, you're not even close to that. When you get close to that, I'll raise up my hand, And I was like, wow, do you actually think you're even like, and by the way, this is a company that just started their supply chain diversity program like 2 years ago. I'm like, trust me, you're not even close to going that far yet. So it's like, really? Like, and by the way, the person that said it was not a white man. So I found that to be even more interesting.
You know what I love about that story? What I love about that story is you're not going to call him out, but if he listens to the podcast, he'll know who it is. So that part of it,
he knows who it is. We've had that conversation.
You know who you are out there.
You know who you are. Look, at the end of the day, I will tell you, like in the subsea space, speaking out wasn't always helpful. Like, if I would be lying if I said I didn't lose business because I spoke out. That you have to know.
Nigel is very sensitive.
He's amazing. He's actually he was one of my biggest supporters actually in the space. And like, he was great, to be honest. But like, I've had other guys that, I'm not kidding. Like, we lost a job one year. We did a job just like it a block away the year before very successfully. And we lost the next job and we lost it to another company. And I said, well, can you give us some feedback? And behind the scenes, one of the higher up said to me, our team said Amy Marks was very aggressive. And I was like, damn straight, I'm aggressive. You want that building to be in that foreign country. Like, I'm going to be aggressive for you. Like, you do realize that. And I thought, what a terrible reason to lose a job. That they cited that the CEO was very aggressive. Funny enough, I thought I was actually on my best behavior in that meeting, and that other people were very aggressive and I wasn't. But I was like, hey, like, don't you want, and that's like sort of the whole lean in thing. Like, I have a love-hate relationship with the whole like lean in, tell people, well, I'm aggressive for you as your advocate now. I'm like, yeah, I kind of like, but here's the worst part about it. That stuff works. Like, it's like, I wish it didn't, but it does. And so it's like, you have to like negotiate with your own authentic self, how willing you are to like, not be your authentic self, to like, listen, how many times in a meeting can I say, I'm sure you've thought of this before, but like, we're all taught as women to say these things that are absolutely ridiculous. And instead, what we should be teaching ourselves is that when a woman says something in a meeting, which just happened last week in this industry, and a woman said a great idea, and like 5 minutes later, somebody else said it, and they were like, what a great idea. And then I said, yes, I'm glad you guys have consensus that, so-and-so, this woman mentioned it 5 minutes ago. Fantastic. And I went, so-and-so, what a great idea from 5 minutes ago. That's what we should be teaching women to do. Not going, I'm sure you've thought of this before, but
The thing that I take away from all that, and what I try to tell younger folks that I speak to, is you always have to play the long game. I mean, yes, you could probably say something in the near term that's going to get you to where you want to go. But if you're playing the long game and you're authentic, and even if you lose some business or you gain some whatever, eventually it'll come back to you, because that's what people miss. That's what people appreciate about maintaining long-term relationships, is they know that you are the same you, whether you win the business or not win it doesn't really make a difference. It's not transactional. And I think what we see a lot, certainly in our politics today, and with a lot of the fat cats that do a lot of backhanded negotiations in the corporate world, certainly in construction and real estate, is this mentality of transactionalism, where it's not really about authenticity and accountability and long-term relationship. It's about how much can I squeeze out of you right this second in this particular interaction, and it's not about building long-term rapport. And if you have that kind of long-term view, and I know that I'm going to be talking to Amy Marks when I'm the 55-year-old and 65-year-old pale male stale problem, when I'm the problem, even though that'll probably be 85 years old at that point, then I will not be embarrassed by other things that I have. Well, I'll certainly be embarrassed. Anyone that knows me knows that I'll be embarrassed by most of the things that I say, but at least I will have been true to myself.
Yes.
And, and that's, I think, the best thing we can teach the younger generation, is that belief in who you are and not manipulating that, because it'll be a never-ending manipulation if you try to, present yourself in a way that you're not.
I would be like, Nabil, I'm going to turn it towards you. You are a man of color and you have a different accent. You've never taken it on the chin just to get some business, have you?
Oh, all the time. However, so there is actually a story behind that as well. I reckon that when I was a younger man, I had a voice, and I would think about it, do it, and I was very opinionated. As I came to America and started blending into corporate America to be a rising star for that matter, I started working on changing my accent to become more Western.
Yep.
And then also started to say things that pleased everybody, and every relationship healthy, yet it wasn't. And here 4 years ago, I basically flatlined and put myself in a position where I experienced death.
Yeah. It's funny, when I went to Autodesk to move over to come out of the industry now, the reason I did that is I was really a little tired, to be honest, of fighting the good fight as a small certified woman-owned company. That's the truth. And I also felt like I could do more for the industry to raise up the level of productivity and industry sustainability with a bigger platform and a bigger voice at a bigger company. However, before I went there, I sat down with the CEO, Andrew, and he would tell you this. In the first conversation I ever had with him, I started out and he said, why Autodesk? You could go anywhere. And I said, I don't know if it is yet, but save me the trouble of the rest of this next couple of days if I cannot be my authentic self at this company. Because if I can't, you and I will shake hands right now, and I will walk out, and it'll be friends and it'll be great. But I'm telling you now that I have no ability anymore not to be my authentic self. And if you don't want that, I can't come work here. And he said, no, we welcome that. And we want authentic people. We want different viewpoints. We are looking for diversity in thought. So if on that note, we're all good. And I was like, it's one thing to hear that. And then I recognized, wow, all these things about what they said in my interview about being authentic and having a different point of view and wanting to help because really the big secret about me is I'm like a pit bull, but in reality, I want to help the world, it be better. And so it comes from a good place. It's actually just not controversy for controversy's sake. I want to make a more sustainable industry and planet. And I want, people to have great jobs, and I want to see our industry survive. But I got really in deep, really quick with the culture of that company to see behind the scenes of what was real. Luckily, I practice gratitude every day now. Look, I fight the good fight every single day as a small woman-owned business for a long time. And then seeing that there are good people out there are good companies out there. I'm sure there are others outside of Autodesk. I've seen a lot of great stories of what's happening now. I feel like I don't want to go back to normal. Like you said, I'm ready to move on to what's next, which is better than normal. I don't want to do anything but be my authentic self. I don't want to listen, I don't want to be in any other space that doesn't look like me or speak to me or anyone that I work with, or, it's like those days are over.
Absolutely. And I reckon that pit bulls are aggressive yet very faithful and loving.
I'm saying, like, that's the part, like, they're the mushies on the couch that, like, you like to pet and squish with you. That's sort of me. I'm like a pit bull that looks like a good house pet. You know what I mean? Like, that's me.
But I suggest that people that meet Amy at conferences, if that ever happens again, do not try to pet her or anything.
No, do not try to pet me.
All right, let's pivot, change the conversation to COVID-19. Where we're at, what are your experiences, and what implications do you see?
It's interesting. I think we have a really great opportunity to reset in a lot of ways, aside from like working collaboratively. Talk about timing. A company that changed to a SaaS organization, a SaaS company 2 years ago, and focused their efforts on online collaboration software. My friends were like, what do you have, like a crystal ball? Like you've been there for 3 weeks and COVID happens. And I was like, yeah, but thank you. I think every good deed I ever did, like, kind of came back in karma at this point. But there's all this money that's about to be spent in lots of different countries on rebuilding economies and infrastructure and things like that. And I really think if we are smart as a world, we will attach some caveats to that money, right? You can't just give out that money and do the same thing we've done that makes us not resilient and not resistant to things that are happening out there in the world that are going to continue to happen, because that's just what's going to be, right? So that money needs to be attached to things like, first of all, we have to expand the definition of critical infrastructure. It has to include digital infrastructure. It has to include healthcare infrastructure, telecom infrastructure. It cannot just be about potholes and like utilities. It can't be, right? So you have to expand the definition. And then anyone that's winning any work around that, we have to make sure first that they're digitized, right? Like the days of paper are over. They have to be digitized. They have to have an ability to collaborate in the cloud if possible, because we all know that on-prem in some ways is at risk. And so we have to be able to collaborate in the cloud, and we need to rebuild some of these things using innovations like industrialized construction, right? Where we're going to create factories where you get better working environments. We're not outdoors. You're going to get a more diverse work population in some of those factories, and they're more innovative. We could do more with less if we just invest in that instead of just throwing money out wildly. Like, to me, we should be throwing out money with strict caveats, and most of the countries are putting out guidelines like that.
Amy, how are you seeing the old guard migrating with this high hockey stick effect that we've actually seen in this COVID-19 era? Is the old guard ready to move on with what they did in the past, to handing the reins off to the millennials and the Gen Zs?
I mean, in some ways, I think they are forcefully cleansed out of their disbelief. If you did not prepare for this, it took you by surprise, and you realized and that's what I'm saying. Like, if you were a construction company, you were not on the cloud, and you had to go into your office because everything you had was on-prem or, God forbid, on paper, like, you will probably not be in business after this. It will be tough for you to come back from this. So right. I think there'll be a cleansing of sorts.
I was talking to a client yesterday. They still manage everything on paper, and they still use Excel spreadsheets to mine all the data.
That's crazy, right? Like, I think about that and I go, what? But like, it's all about the data, right? So even in construction, design and construction, one of my biggest challenges and what we're working on now, especially at Autodesk, is moving construction and manufacturing and operations, all that information, all that data you need up into design, right? Because we own the design platform of AutoCAD and Revit. We own the Autodesk Construction Cloud, the construction platform, and we own a lot of the manufacturing software and operations software like PLM and things like that, and Inventor. So it's like, okay, you own all these amazing products that are connected functionally through things like BIM 360, but we've got to be able to move that data, that functional data, through our product portfolio and start being predictive about things with our data, letting clients have causation for our data, letting them know when they're designing things, what it is, by giving them options like we have of generative design and things like digital twin. And so it's like, I looked across and I was like, hey, I realized even in my space that I was in, it really is going to be all about the data. And in order to have data that functions well, it needs a framework to function within, right? And it needs, like, the greatest part about Autodesk is I feel like I don't have to sell people software. They already use it. already. Like everybody uses it. So I just have to really work with them on their process on how to connect this data and how to do it in the best format with the best thinking and the best culture so that we start building things more productively, right?
One can say that people used Autodesk in order to fabricate, but now that they have Amy Marks, Autodesk will prefabricate. Okay, sorry. Go ahead.
I'm saying, like, it really is about, if you think about it, it's, I always say they call me the Queen of Prefab, but in reality, it has so many benefits to it that's really why I love it. Not just because we're prefabricating things, but like, think about it. Like, it's less waste. Construction produces an ungodly amount of waste in its construction process, right? Like, I think we're like responsible for 40% of the waste that's in our landfills. It solves for that. We can pre-cut, pre-drill, or like everything. Like, we don't have to have that much waste. We don't have to have, we can have skilled labor at the point in which they're doing something in a factory. So industrialized construction actually doesn't mean prefab. It means the application of manufacturing techniques to the built environment, both design, construction, and operate, right? Like, so the cool part about what I'm doing now is that I really feel like I used to teach a great process and change in behavior and thinking, but now I have that attached to the most powerful tech stack in the world that allows for the functional, data to flow across it.
So if there are any kids today that just graduated from the marketing program at the University of Florida,
and played rugby,
and played rugby, I think you guys are 60% of the way there to becoming the next prefab queen.
Do you know what I say to all those kids? Honestly, like, it's not about what job you get next or the next job or the next job. In some ways, focus on the skills that you want to acquire. Because if you focus on jobs, you typically get caught in a lane, but you don't necessarily get the skills you want for what you want to be when you grow up. And like, most times you don't really know what you want to be when you grow up, unless you're like, I want to be an orthodontist. That would have been easier for me if I knew. I didn't know I wanted to do this thing that didn't exist. By the way, prefab consultant, when I started, wasn't a thing. It didn't even exist. I was like, I just want to be where no one else is. If you think about what you want to be and you think about what skill set that takes, I've been telling all my friends now, when they write their resumes, write about what skills you have, what skills you want to gain, and also the culture of the organization that you're trying to be a part of, instead of what job title you want, instead of where you want to be, because that's more important in your journey than anything else. I mean, I've had some weird jobs over the years that I'm like, that was the best job ever I had because now I can do this. And I never would have thought about it, later. Don't go where the puck is, go where the puck's going to be. I'm great at understanding where the puck's going. That's all from rugby. I was not fond of running all over the place. Like,
is there a puck in rugby? I really
no. I'm using a hockey now. I was using hockey, but like in rugby, it's all about, for me, it was all about the angles, right? I'm like, I'm going to go the shortest distance possible to get what I want. And I feel like it's also a game where you have to like have a strategic overview of the whole field to understand like how to win. So like, one thing about me is I just know how to win and what I want, where the puck is going or where the ball is going to be, or any of those analogies you use in sports. And that's more important. And in some ways, I think Autodesk recognizes, and I love being there because they recognize that somebody who actually never built software understands better than anybody else probably where that puck's going to be, because
programmers are not the people that use the software 100% of the time. Right? So they're never who better than someone that uses the software, right?
Right. I mean, that's the funny thing is, the good news is that Autodesk, I'm not the only one. I mean, that's good. I used to think, look, when you lead teams, one of the things you tell yourself is that people are irreplaceable, right? I had a great team and most of my guys worked for me for 15 years. And like, I've had my eyes open. There are a lot of amazing people out there in the world that do a lot of amazing things. And going to a big organization after being in lots of small organizations for the last 20 years has allowed me to be like, wow, there's a lot of really smart industry people that I would have never guessed. They're all here. And the more you speak out and put sunshine on your own thoughts, the more they are magnetically attracted to you, right? So that whole sunshine concept.
Absolutely. I believe this can go on forever. We should have a series of the Amy Marks podcast.
You know why I love being on the show? Because I always say, it's such a blessing to talk to smart people that you said it in the beginning. Smart people are people that say they know what they know and they'll go toe to toe on it with anybody. But they're also okay saying I don't know anything about that. I can learn about it. I can hire somebody for it. I can talk to people. But if I'm the first one to raise up my hand and be like, I don't know anything about this, but teach me. And let's I can apply what I know to it, but I don't.
It's also why one of the best skills is being able to explain, right? I mean, it's one thing for like the standard geek, the SNL geek that was played by Jimmy Fallon was like, move, get out of the way, let me do it. But it's that old, you can lead a horse to water, but you need to drink or whatever that metaphor is.
Yeah, we all want to learn. I mean, like, listen, the funny part is all these bad behaviors that we see, I don't want to create a world that is there to protect us from every tiny exception. I truly, like, maybe this is the Pollyanna side of me that most people don't know. Like, I actually think most people show up every day to work and they're like, I want to do a good job today. Like, I think they do. And it's our responsibility as managers to create a place that is good for them to work at, where they feel valued and they understand the definition of what good is and what success looks like and what they're supposed to do. And then we give them training and tools and that their job is well processed. Like, honestly, like, I'm much nicer than most people make me out to be in the world.
We now know you're a really nice person.
I know, don't tell anybody. It's kind of a secret. I like when they're afraid. I actually think it's easier. Look, at the end of the day, I love what you're promoting here, which is to be your authentic self and like to humanize, especially people like me, but to really get behind and know what drives people, because that's like, look, this is the equivalent of you getting to play golf with me for 8 hours.
Right.
I should just like pass the podcast to everyone that wants to play golf.
And my God, I mean, Nabil might have excelled at it, but my God, it would have been an embarrassing show for me if we were on the golf course.
I don't think I can handle 8 hours of golfing, but this is certainly great. Being a rugby player, going to college for marketing and public relationships, having exposure and construction to data centers and technology.
Yeah.
What would you do different if you were queen for a day?
Well, I'm queen every day, but I've like, it's been a tough road. I won't say it was easy, and I'm not proud of certain choices that I've made. Like you said, you've taken it on the chin before. I've taken it on the chin before. Like we've all taken it on the chin at some point in our life where we were less confident or we needed to take it on the chin for whatever reason. I wish I had taken it less on the chin sometimes. And probably like, I don't know, the one thing I might change is I think sometimes when it's like you against the world, you think the world is everyone. And like sometimes, like one of my really good women friends in the industry said, "You're so nice to women in this space. Like you practice everything you preach." She's like, "Sometimes you're a little hard on the men. Like there are good men out there, like, that are not like part of the war against, women and minorities." And I'm like, I know. And like that was a long time ago. And she was right. And I realized like, you know what? I have to be a little bit more open that every conversation is not that, even though they may look like pale male and stale, they might not be pale male and stale. And so like we have our own, thoughts to get over, even as champions of diversity and inclusion, right? So I try to be a little bit more open now and a little softer. I hate that phrasing. I probably regret maybe not giving people so much of a chance that I could have given a better chance to. If I was really honest with myself and pointed the finger at myself, I would say I could have given a better chance to some people that were probably on my side.
What would you tell the younger Amy Marks if you were to do it all over again?
I'm like, she's impossible to talk to. No.
Well, you have one. You have one in your house. So can we bring in the 11-year-old and bestow on her the wisdom that only a mother who has experienced it can?
I don't know. I would say to my younger self, like, don't be so hard on yourself. And I always say one of the things about carrying a big bat, if you're like one of those guys that carries a big bat in life, like I always did, the person you use it most on is yourself. And it's like, when you do something wrong, I'm like my worst enemy and I could really beat myself up. So I would probably say like, you're going to make mistakes, like just quickly get over it. Don't beat yourself up and just move on. You'll be so much better. Because that was a recurring theme. Like how much more capacity would they have in their brain every day if they didn't have to be so defensive or think what they said or how they spoke or how they sat or what they did? Or, it's like, I just want to tell myself, like, let it go, like, let it all go, be your authentic self, free up some brain space capacity and surround yourself with amazing people because you'll just get that much further.
My daughter was right. Elsa was right. Let it go. Damn it.
I know.
Amy, this is exactly how the Nomad Futurist podcast started.
Yeah.
In New York City. I'm from Hawaii. I'm laid back and he's on the go. Just let it go, Phil.
Right?
I can't. I'll let it go when I move to Kona. It's easy to let it go in Kona.
But like the stuff you have going on right now is like business stuff in your head, right? Like a lot of that stuff. And we run fast and we do things quickly. Imagine like that. And then on top of that, you have to put all this stuff that you run in your head negatively about like your behavior or like being a woman in the space, being the only one, being the only minority in the space. Like that other stuff takes up so much space in our brain.
You see it now. This is going to be a weird comparison, and I know we're running low on time, but you see it now. I'm in Brooklyn, right? So I take my kids out during this kind of pandemic crisis, this idea of having to be hyper aware of having the mask on and touching things, and then the hyper awareness element takes up so much space. And I can only imagine that pre-pandemic, if you were someone of a different race and you have a different phraseology or whatever, and you have to be hyper aware of how you were saying everything because of all that stuff, there's no question about it. So hyper awareness is not...
Again, like, I don't think we can ever imagine what it's like to be you can obviously, Nabil, you're a different, you have brown skin, as you said. And like,
I thought you were pointing to me as a Jew. Damn it.
And you're, hey, like if you say that out loud, that in other cases is like having brown skin and being a woman. But I think we've had like some hint and some taste of what that's like. And it doesn't feel good, right? We're not our best selves. And I think that's the thing I want to be in my life now. I'm 40, I'll be 49 this summer. I want to be my best self every day. Like, I want to surround myself with people that make me my best self. I want to do things that make me my best self. And I think COVID, because we've had a little bit of an opportunity not to like be running around the world, getting on planes, like I bought a Pilates reformer that is in my house. And like, I had luckily a Peloton before this. And I was like, you know what? This is really important to me. Like eating healthy and doing these things, I want to do that. And I'm being with my kid for dinner and things like that. I think you're going to see a lot of people changing their life to be their best selves now because they just had a taste of what it's like by force. And that's good. We need that. In some ways, like I needed a timeout. And listen, don't ever stop speaking out. That's my one thing I'm taking away from what's going on now. Be a voice for change in whatever that means to you to make it a safe environment for other people.
Amy, thank you very much for joining us. This has been absolutely phenomenal. Thanks for taking the time.
Awesome. You guys rock. I love this. I'll do this again.
This has been great. Nothing lasts forever. Markets will come back, currencies will rebound, businesses will go on, and we'll all move on. That could happen next week, next month, or next year. I'm confident that those who prepare rather than panic will come out of this stronger. Thank you for joining us. This has been brought to you by Nomad Futurist. Check us